Okay. Hey, everybody. Welcome to the stream. As I mentioned, I'm going to do a raffle. I'm going to do 5 $20 giveaways because I've just been killing it with Costco. I'll explain more. But with me is Victor H. Investing. That's the name, right? Victor H. Investing.
That's right.
He has a channel. He was he was a sub of mine, I think, before he started a channel. But I know he's done a channel for, I don't know how long, maybe a couple of years. But he'll explain now more about his channel himself. So, Victor, take it away.
Yeah, thanks, Scott. So I've been watching Scott's channel, geez, I'm going to say for 2.5, 3 years. Did you start around 3 years ago?
And 3.5, yeah.
Yeah, I think I remember I was in before you hit to 1,000 subs. So I remember that event for you. And
yeah.
I learned a lot of structure around, discounted cash flow modeling from Scott. So I really appreciate you doing so many videos because I learned how to put good structure, and then I created my own. Really, my channel is about my journey as an investor. I'm 55. I've been investing for 30 years. Now, the last 5 have probably been, probably more intense and, a lot more stock investing. And it's been really interesting. I own a variety of stocks that I cover on my channel, as well as stocks that I don't own. And I go through the whole thought process of making that investment. And I never give advice that, hey, you should buy this stock or not buy it. I'm really just sharing my journey, because when I go on YouTube channels, I'm just trying to see what other people are doing, how they go through their investing process, how they learn from their mistakes or their successes, just to become better. And that's my intent, is to become better and better and make more and more money from my stocks.
Yeah, it's a process. It's like learning a language, just little by little. If you could just keep moving forward, which is the hardest part of anything, is just moving forward. We all just kind of quit if we feel like we're not learning or we're not progressing. We get frustrated and quit, but just kind of keep moving forward, and you'd be surprised. Yeah, I actually started, I think, when I was in high school, like learning about stocks. I just wrote this down so I wouldn't forget. So I think it was around 15, 16 when I started like reading the paper and tracking stocks. And I bought my first one at 18. I actually was right out of high school. I worked in the World Trade Center at Credit Suisse, First Boston. And that's how I bought it, because there was no internet to buy stocks. When you first bought a stock, I bet you there was fractions, right? After the number, like 5 3/8. Do you remember that?
Yeah, I remember buying stocks, but it was like really expensive. I forgot how much each trade was, and I had to go through a broker, and it was like, it was just very slow and a lot of friction, I guess is what we would say. And then over time, it just kept getting better and better. Now we have, zero cost trades. You can trade very, very easily.
And it's so fluid. You can, in seconds. When I just happened to be working at an investment bank. So there was these things called interoffice envelopes. It's just an envelope where you stick a message inside, you put it in a box, then somebody who works at the company, it's their job to go to each box, take the envelope out, and then maybe go down a floor and hand it to the person, whoever I wrote their name on the envelope. And that's how I did it. I wrote the trade, Nordstrom, the ticker, how many shares I wanted. I think I had to set up an account with beforehand, and then they would get my message, buy the stock. So it wasn't an easy process. It could take hours sometimes, but that was I think that was in 99. Was it 99? Yeah, 99, I think. And it used to be fractions after stock names. Like now it's decimals, like trading at 5.75 a share, but it used to be in like 5 3/4. It was not 5.75.
Okay. Yeah.
When I started trading, I think they changed that in the early 2000s, but like everything with it was an eighth. So 5 1/8, 5 2/8. Well, wouldn't be 2/8. It'd be 5 1/4. Then the next one would be 5 3/8, 5 1/2, 5 5/8. So it'd be an eighth. But it was too confusing, I think, for a lot of people, fractions. So they changed it, which is better because now you could have every number. So it could be like $5.83.
Right.
But there would be no possible way to have 5.83.
Yeah, and
like
you think about some of these like big value stocks, like Amazon is. Can't think of how much they are, but the Berkshire shares, you'd have like a big number followed by a fraction.
Yeah, it would. And I remember reading and looking at Berkshire Hathaway, and it was, I think, 17,000 when I used to in high school. It's like, Mike, $17,000. How could you buy that stock? How could you ever make money?
Yeah.
And now it's like closing in on 600,000.
Yeah, amazing.
I should have used my bar mitzvah money to buy one share of Berkshire Hathaway.
Yeah, I bought. I mean, I bought some that I wish I could have held them for a long time. I bought Microsoft a long time ago. That one panned out.
Yeah, that's.
But I bought some losers too. Some in the internet age. I had Webvan that went bust. Sun Micro just killed me. Lost like 90% of my investment. But some really did well, so I'll take them. I bought TSM early and made a lot of money on TSM. Yeah, I sold it near the height, and I was just like, okay, that's enough. Move on and buy some other semiconductor companies. And semiconductors have kind of been I've been lucky. I sold Broadcom, and Broadcom's still going up, but I was, I guess, fortunate enough to buy it and see it just get run up. And I just think it's overpriced now. So I sold and, did really well with Broadcom, did really well with TSM, lost money on Intel. Who didn't? And missed on NVIDIA. Why didn't I buy NVIDIA?
I know. It seems so obvious.
No, right? They're really volatile, and if you look at their financials, it's an up and down revenue line. You can't really get your hands around it. But once AI kind of became this big thing this year, they just exploded.
And they're still not nearly as big as in terms of revenue. Like they don't have that much. I think Broadcom has double the revenue NVIDIA has. Intel has been coming down. Intel used to have the most revenue for like decades, but I think they've been declining a lot.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, it's everything's so obvious after it happens. Like, oh my God, why didn't I do that? But even if I was able to, like, let me bring up NVIDIA. Oh, even like let's even if I did tell you in 95 to buy Amazon, nobody here could have sat on it for close to 3 decades, because this is what would have happened. And most people, I don't know if I could even see the chart.
Yeah, right after the .com bubble, Amazon went down big time, and it seemed
it went down 90%.
Correct.
So yeah, even if I told you back here, it's even hard to tell. Like, say it's only 10 cents because it's stock adjusted. Like, say you bought $1,000 of Amazon, and then you got up to like $300,000. after like 5 years. And say you held it and you went from 300 down to like 3,000. So you're tripled your original investment, but like you're down 95%. Like almost, it would be so hard for anybody to even. Most people would have sold on the way up, not even waited a few years. But even if you were able to wait up to the top and then it came down again from 1,000 to 300,000 down to 3,000, and then if it started creeping back up, say now you're at 100,000 or something, like most people would have just took the money because they don't want to see it go back down 90%.
Right.
But like it's just so hard to sit and wait and you didn't know the $1,000 would have turned into like 40 million. You didn't know.
Right.
You had to wait 30 years, but it's just so hard to sit and not sell, especially if you need money. So what are your bigger? You said Meta is one of your bigger ones.
Yeah, Meta is my biggest position. That's one where, I think 2022 it really tested Meta stockholders because it went down like 80%. And
yeah.
I bought, continued to buy, and
Smart,
it took off beginning at the end of 22, and it's been the number one dollar gainer for me. My number one percentage gainer is Coinbase, and I know crypto is kind of a weird alternative investment class, but my Coinbase stock is up 340%. It even beats Nvidia, and
wow.
so that's doing really well. My second biggest position is Chevron. And my first job out of college was working for an oil company that got acquired by Chevron. So in effect, I learned the oil business and have owned shares since that experience, and just kept adding to that position. And they pay a really good dividend. And then my third biggest position is Alphabet. Airbnb is a stock that I'm doing really well with, and I really believe in. And part of the reason for it is I owned 2 properties that we put on Airbnb for 9+ years, and we boomed. We did really well, and I got a chance to experience Booking and the other competitors. Booking was the second, most popular, rental site, but Airbnb would crush everybody. I mean, customers just liked Airbnb more. And that experience led me to think, hey, Airbnb is going to be a good company. They don't own any real estate, but they control so much real estate around the world. And their cash flow is awesome. Their growth rate is great. So that's my fourth biggest position is Airbnb.
Yeah, it's a nice scalable business, Airbnb. For Airbnb, it's very easy to scale. It's like when you have to make something like a car or a phone, it just makes it harder to scale because you have to build factories, you have to hire people, you have to deal with a lot of stuff. But when you don't actually own any real estate like Airbnb, it just makes it so much easier to grow. This is the way I was going to do the raffle. The way I usually do it is I have a randomizer here and I keep clicking it. So you have to get picked twice to win. And let me know if you're here. Just say anything so I could put you on the list. So 2 of your stocks have to be picked. Yeah, let me know if you're here. Just you write anything, even like just a letter, so I could put you on this James Natalie T. Christian. So what other so tell us some of your videos you did. Like, what are the popular ones, and what's your concept like?
Sure. So the ones that are getting a lot of views are usually the really risky ones. One that's really popular is MPW, the REIT that
Yeah.
is
Yeah, I
either
just
going
did
to go
that.
bankrupt or it's going to be a 4-bagger in the next year or 2 years. And I analyze the company and I don't hold anything back. I state the risks as I see them. I think it's a risky stock, but I also look at the cash flows they produce, and I think they're going to pay all their bills. I don't think they're going to go bankrupt. They're also in healthcare, which is pretty stable. I mean, hospitals don't move locations every other year, right? They're there for the long haul, and so it's a stable industry they support, and it's a REIT. They have real estate. They can sell properties to create cash. So that's been a really popular one. It creates a lot of interesting comments. I think one of the biggest returns in investment for me from the channel is the comments. People commenting, expressing how they look at MPW. There's some people that are negative on MPW. And there's some people that are positive on it. I read both. I appreciate both comments. I want to see both sides, or I want to read both sides of that argument. So that's a real popular one. Then one that's becoming really popular is Zim. You did a video on Zim. I did a video on Zim a couple weeks ago.
Yeah, Zim gets a lot of views. Always gets a lot of views. Well,
shipping rates may be on the rise because there's a lot of tension in the Red Sea as well as the Erie Canal and or the Suez Canal, excuse me, and that is going to create, I think surcharges and potentially higher rates. And if rates go up, then these shipping companies make a lot more money. And there's a lot of shorts on both MPW and Zim, which is always an interesting cat and mouse game. If the stock takes off, it's going to be additional fuel will be those short sellers having to get out of the position.
Yeah. And just so people know, you can't bankrupt the company by shorting them. Like, even if everybody in the world shorts a company, because when you short a company, that doesn't mean less people are going to buy that company's products. You're just betting that the stock price will go down. It could artificially push it down, but the only way a company would go bankrupt from a short is if the stock price got pushed down so far they weren't able to. Because one important part of a stock price going up is that you can issue stock and get a better deal. Because when a company's stock price goes down and they need to dilute shareholders, they have to issue even more shares than when if the price was inflated, that's when the company should be issuing stock.
Yeah, I would say that in some cases, short sellers do reveal that a company is, a fraud, and those companies do go bankrupt because it's made, they bring light to that. So I would say that those examples, those did go bankrupt, and they should have gone bankrupt. But in some cases, for example, over the last couple of years, a couple of short squeezes that I had stocks on, one of them was with Big Five. I bought Big Five, which is a retailer, tiny. You did a video. And I know Big Five because they're headquartered not too far from where I live. I started buying shares at $2. Okay. They got a short squeeze. I sold my position at $40.
Wow.
So, and that was over the course of like a year and a half. So that was fun. And then the other short squeeze was a REIT that, for whatever reason, it just started to get a lot of bad press. And again, it squeezed. And when that happens, I sell, because if I can't, obviously with Big Five, I couldn't justify that valuation. And I'm done. I've made enough money. I'm done. I exited the position. Then I came back and started buying Big Five again.
Yeah. The thing is, when a stock is heavily shorted, the company could be a crap company and they should go out of business if they're like losing money, they don't have a good business model, or if they're fraud, of course, like if they're so, but you don't know, like sometimes it's risky because if there's a lot of shorting out there, it could be a company that is eventually going to go bankrupt. So you don't want to buy shares of a company before they go bankrupt. But if you have some insight, like Victor did on Big Five, you can get an amazing deal if you buy a stock. But it could be a little risky unless you know what you're doing. The same thing, like if what isn't risky, like when a big like tobacco company has a huge lawsuit and the stock crashes because of the lawsuit, like because these companies get sued all the time. Every day Microsoft is dealing with a lawsuit. So something like that, like a negative press that brings the stock price down, that's a great buying opportunity. But you need to stomach it, because if it keeps going down, you can't get scared and sell, which most people do. Like with Meta, like my friend was getting Meta at 150.
Beautiful.
He said it can't go lower than 150. I go, why can't it go lower than 100? He goes, no, it can't. And I just said that it happened to go lower than 100. I didn't think it would. And of course, he gets all scared and sells because he thinks it's going to zero. But you just have to stomach it.
Yeah.
And even though it might be hard to sleep at night.
Yeah. The other example I'd put out there is Netflix. It was super interesting. Netflix is the #1 streamer. Nobody could argue they're the innovator. They're the one that they're setting the agenda for streaming around the world. And I think from the peak to the bottom, they went down 76%.
Yeah.
Along the way, Bill Ackman bought with a lot of press and then sold, if you recall. And he sold and he swapped $400 million. Okay. And it kept going down. And I kept, analyzing it, putting it through my valuation model, which, by the way, it's different than yours, but you're kind of like my sensei. I learned from you and then created it, with the way that I think. I have an MBA. I'm good with math.
Everybody has their own
models.
opinion. Yeah.
And, but I just wanted to match my train of thought. And then I bought Netflix and I bought a big position, and geez, man, my position went up 60, 80% in like 2-3 months. And it was just tracking that stock because it starts with a quality in some cases. Netflix is top quality. It's the #1 player. It's like, they're not going to go anywhere. They're getting $10, $20 from how many people around the world? 1 billion. And so you have a stock coming down, a lot of like just negative press around it. And at a certain point, I just started to buy, and I really started to buy really good shares. And then it jumped up, and I sold 90% of my Netflix position because it rose too fast and it went on the valuation I had for it.
I bought 2 on the way down. I didn't buy it. I mean, it was down 35%, and I've always wanted to get Netflix. So I bought, and then I was down like another 35, 40% after a few months. But now I'm up 25 or 30%. So I'm fine. So this is the way I want to do the raffle. You have to get picked twice. And this doesn't count, but I'm just show you how it works. So I just go into this. Well, I don't need to go into that cell. I just go into any cell, and then it changes number. So the number has to change. Like if I go into the cell now and 17 stays, it doesn't count. So it has to change. And the second change, like, so if I go, this is the first change, that doesn't mean anything, then the second change. So 11 gets picked. That was just a practice. So that's how it works. But you have to get picked twice. So this is the first pick. So 11 has to change. Now the next number is so 3. So Charles O, he got 1. So if another 3 comes up, he'll get a $20 Amazon gift card. And I'll just keep going. So now I'm going to change it. This doesn't count. Now this is the real one, 20. So John McLaren. So change to 11. JB Weld. But try to email me your email, and feel free to do it now. Because I had another channel years ago. I used to scratch off lotto tickets, and we did a ton of these raffles. I used to do like all the time. And there's like, if you win, like say JB Weld wins, anybody can just email me and say, hi, this is JB Weld, or even create a new Gmail that looks like JB Weld and say, I won, send me the Amazon, which is what people did all the time, my old channel. I do have a way around that. I know how to figure out how to confirm it. I don't want to tell you how I do it, because then the scammers will figure out around that. So I'm just saying, so if you email me now and say, hey, Scott, this is Chris Clark. Hey, Scott, this is Maria Sand. I'll have your email in my system. So if anybody emails me after the stream and say, hey, I'm JB, send me the gift card, I'll already know you. If that makes sense, everybody. You don't have to email me now. But if you do, I won't email. I don't have like a list. This is just I don't even use this email really ever. So I don't like send marketing emails. So feel free to email me now. But even if you don't, just make sure you email me afterwards. And then I have a way to confirm it's really you once you do email me. So it's going to be 5 $20 Amazon gift cards. And I made like a few $1,000s just on this. Costco paid a $15 dividend, a special dividend. Victor, are you familiar with special dividends?
Yeah.
So a special dividend is not a recurring thing. Like when you invest in Pfizer, they pay a quarterly dividend. They've been paying it for decades, every single quarter, and they generally raise it. Special dividend is if a company is just making too much money and they don't know what to do with all that money, they may give a special dividend. It's usually a lot bigger than a regular dividend. Costco's given $15 per share. This is the 5th special dividend they've given. It might sound odd, like how could a company not know what to do with all the money? But I mean, it's logical. You own the company, you should be getting rewarded. So every shareholder gets $15, but you have to own the stock on. I wrote it in my post. I think you have to own the stock on December 29th in order to get that dividend. But you can't game the system. The stock price will go down $15 when they do pay that $15 dividend. Yeah. So it's not like you can benefit and just buy the stock and then sell it. I mean, the stock may go up even though they even though they gave $15 dividend. Say the stock went up $5 after they gave the $15 dividend. That just means the stock would have went up $20, but instead it went up $5 because of that dividend. But if the stock is flat, like there's no trading at all on Costco, it will go down $15 to make up for the $15 dividend. That's how dividends work. But anyways.
Hey, Scott, would you mind if I kind of picked up a discussion point on the chat that came up?
Yeah, why don't you talk and I'll just do the numbers while everybody watches the numbers and listens to you.
So John Michael put a comment. My issue with Netflix is that Apple, Google, Amazon could offer the same service for free without implicating the business at all. They have no pricing power. So let me take that topic on, and I appreciate the point of view. I think we can have different point of views on something, but I'll point to a couple of examples. So if you look at Google search, when Google came out, they were tiny, and this giant company, Microsoft, tried to rub them out basically. And Microsoft poured a lot of energy and capital and effort to basically take over search, and they couldn't. Reason for it was Google is just better. And it innovated, it kept getting better, it kept getting better. And it became the de facto search for the world, I guess. And that's one example of the smaller company that had focus in one area, just dominated by innovation. Now I'll show a different example. Facebook came out and they had a social network. It was growing. And Google thought, hey, we want to grow. We want to have our social network. And I forgot what theirs was called, but they had all the resources to go after Facebook, and they couldn't, because Facebook was very focused on the social network, the experience, the users, and the rest is history. Facebook is dominant in social networks and so forth. So back to Netflix so Netflix basically has been developing the streaming business. And could you imagine all the data they have on user preferences? And they're not only here in the US, they're around the world. I've traveled to Mexico City, stayed there for 6 weeks. I went to Europe. Netflix is everywhere, and they localize their content based on regions. So Netflix is so ahead of everybody else that even if a big, company wanted to go after their business, I think they'd have a tough time, because we've seen that story play out in the past. I could be wrong, but I just wanted to share that with you guys.
Well, was the question why can't someone compete with Netflix?
Yeah,
the question?
I think the point was that Netflix doesn't have a moat or a competitive advantage, because one of the bigger players can just come in, and Amazon does have a streaming service. Amazon has their video streaming business, and I'm one to say that the company's ability to innovate and be the best in that marketplace, that in itself is the moat in technology. In look at NVIDIA, they have the best GPUs, and they're crushing it. And you can go into technology example after example and say the moat is because those people know how to create the service better than anybody else, or the product.
Yeah. But if you think about it, Apple's the biggest company in the world. So Apple can do anything, right? If they're bigger than anybody, they can take over anyone. Of course, anybody can take over anyone. There's generally nothing super special about anything. I mean, sure, Coca-Cola has a great recipe, but it's really they've been around 150 years. It's the brand. You can't really compete on a brand level, even if you develop a product identical. But streaming, the most expensive thing by far for streaming, for like Netflix, the content costs. They spend an enormous amount of money on the content. So if a company is willing to drop several $100 billion, I mean, over the past 20 years, they probably spent that much in building content. Yeah, then they can compete. But it's sometimes it's like an ROE kind of thing. The best return is do what you're good at. And it's going to be hard for someone to compete. Like they have, I think, 230 million subscribers, Netflix. So sure, someone can compete, but it could take, and it took them lots of losses to get to that point. If a company's willing to put all that money into competing with them, it's possible. I mean, Disney's a competitor. The reason Disney has an advantage is because they have so much content they own already. When Netflix started the game, they didn't own anything. So they had to buy all the content. Like, could you just Seinfeld alone, they probably spent $1 billion just that one show. There's so much money. So it makes sense for someone like Disney to compete because they already own a lot of content. They don't have to buy as much as Netflix has to buy. Okay, so I'll keep going. BlackBerry was the same before Apple.
It's a good point. Yep.
Yeah, I mean, they were the kings, right?
Yeah. BlackBerry had like 80% market share of the smartphone market, and the innovator was Apple in that case. Apple was kind of like the the smaller player in that, kind of scene. And Apple just had a better device and took over.
Yeah, it's they're just amazing, Apple. They really. Any thoughts on PayPal? It's a good.
So I'm
I'll keep
I'm
going with
buying
this.
PayPal, and I'm buying a pretty good sized position. And I just believe that there's just a lot of value there. That's totally a value play in my mind. They create a lot of cash. They're growing. And in some areas, they're really good. Their Venmo product really isn't monetized yet. Um, in some areas, like the buy now, pay later model, I think that's going to take off. So there's just a lot of value with PayPal, and I'm buying shares. We'll see if I'm right or wrong, and if I make money or lose money. Right now, I'm underwater on my PayPal stock, by the way.
Yeah, I don't own PayPal. I don't think I would buy it. I do like PayPal a lot. And like that's a company that when earlier we were talking about Netflix, that's so much easier to invade because it's not. I mean, it's not like an easy thing to displace PayPal, but it's cost wise. I mean, it's so much cheaper than trying to displace Netflix. You don't have to spend hundreds of billions of dollars to accumulate content. I do like PayPal a lot as a customer. As an investor, I think it's the competition. I think is just too fierce, and I just think they're because they don't even have eBay anymore, right? They used to be eBay, pretty much monopoly on eBay.
Correct.
Now they'd have Venmo going for them, which is the only reason I would consider investing in them. But I don't know. I don't really.
Yeah, we'll see. I think there's if I were to take an unofficial kind of like assessment of people that are positive on PayPal versus negative, the negatives outvote the positives. Probably 7 out of 10 people are like, oh, there's a lot of problems there. They're vulnerable. But we'll see. The thing that I continue to see out of PayPal is revenue growth. And to me, the things that I look at for a business, if a healthy business is growing the top line while being profitable and generating a good portion of free cash, that's a good business. And if their balance sheet doesn't have a lot of debt, those are the big pieces that I look at in a business. And PayPal fits the mold that I'm looking for. But one thing that I think there was a lot of concern around their buy now, pay later business. They've had to carry a lot of that debt, but they now have a private equity group, I forgot the name, that is going to be buying that debt, and then that's going to be off their balance sheet. So that's good. If it gets off their balance sheet in a quarter, I think that's going to help them. But that's what I'm hanging my hat on with PayPal is if that top line keeps growing, I'm going to ignore all the negative news because, you can't argue with the data. They're growing their business by about 10%, and they're already a pretty big business.
Yeah. Alipay, if you like PayPal, Alipay is 10 times or 20 times as big as PayPal. Alibaba owns Alipay.
Go ahead.
There's a Chinese risk there. So
yeah, I was about to say that I'd love to open up a conversation and get comments on. So I own Baba. I've lost money on Alibaba, and man, the financials are great. They grow, they make money, but I think there's something there where you just can't value Alibaba like you would value Amazon or a competitor here in the US. It just doesn't translate. And Alipay's, I would say that would be in the same category. If you go outside and I'm in the US, so if you go outside the US, you're taking on some risk, as somebody investing out of their home country would be taking risk investing out of their home country. I do invest in I invest in Alibaba. StoneCo down in Brazil is a real winner. I've been investing in StoneCo and so forth. But I have not figured out why Alibaba is so low priced. I can't get my head around what's the logic and how can I assess the discount that would be applied to I guess a Chinese company that is traded on the New York Stock Exchange. If anybody has comments around that, I'd be really interested.
Yeah, it's that country risk. I did invest. I usually invest in U.S. companies. I did invest in New Holdings. It's a Brazilian fintech. I'm up 100%. I got it at. I write down my cost basis on everything on my phone, so I know where to track it. I think it was 424 I bought it at. Yeah, 424 in June of 2022. So I got it around here in June. And it did fall down to 350 at the low, but I'm up 100% now. So I'm really happy with that. They're a Brazilian company, but they control fintech in all of South America, which is a really growing part of the world. Lots of people, lots of it's kind of like how China was in the 90s and early 2000s. They were just growing like unbelievable pace, but that's kind of stopped a little bit because when you have 1+ billion people and there's 200 million people who are going to buy a home for the first time because they can afford it, and another 200 million people who want to upgrade their home. Like just so much, so much demand for so many things when you have that many people who are looking to upgrade their life. Of course, overall, the country of China is a lot poorer than America on an average basis, but there's just so many people. And then there's plenty of people in China that are middle upper class. Number wise, there's probably as many people upper class as in America, just because when you compare America 400 million to 1.2 billion. Nubank. Yeah, anybody else like Nubank? Do you follow fintechs at all? I mean,
so one of the moves that I should say, one of the sectors that I thought was beaten down without merit, I would say, is the financial sector. So I started buying into banks, and I spread my risk because I wasn't sure which bank would do great. So I started buying into U.S. Bank, Citibank, and then Midland States Bank. I bought into Ally Financial, which is consumer finance, but they also have a bank. They have an online bank, and StoneCo, and then PayPal and so forth. And it's really paid off because that sector, if you recall, in the late spring, we had the Silicon Valley Bank go under, and there's a run on that bank, and they no longer exist. Well, that created a lot of fear, and bank stocks just got, decimated, as well as other financial, stocks. Well, if you look at the last 3 months, they've been really, really rallying. So it's really come back. And I think it may have a lot more to go at the beginning here of 2024. So that's been a sector that, as we look at 2023, what worked, and then potentially what's going to work in 2024.
Yeah.
I think some sectors should be coming back. Financials is already proving it's coming back, but healthcare surprised me how bad it did in 23. Could it rebound in 24 potentially? So companies like Pfizer, companies in that sector could really rally, as well as materials and industrials looks like the recession isn't going to be as bad as first thought. It's either going to be a soft landing or no landing recession. So we'll see what happens. But that's one of the plans I have for 24 is trying to find good companies and stay with good companies in sectors that I think are going to rebound in 24.
So, Cyan, the way it works is I use my number generator, and this is just an example. Like, so it's on 24. So the first number doesn't count. It has to change twice. Number one, then I would highlight number one, but you have to get 2 wins to win the raffle. So a lot of people are going to be highlighted for 1 win until somebody hits the second win. And then that's the one who wins the prize. So you have to get picked twice. The highlight is just for me to keep track of it, but you don't win anything by getting highlighted. Carmelo asked a question that, is it true that it's better for a company to keep money on the balance sheet instead of dividing it out since you don't pay taxes? I don't know when you say dividing it out, I think you mean instead of paying a dividend, right? Instead of paying a dividend. And most companies have a book value higher than 1. Most companies have a book value higher than 1, not because they keep a lot of cash on their balance sheet, but I'm not 100% sure on your question, but your companies don't, it's not smart to keep a lot of cash on your balance sheet. You should keep enough cash to pay your bills, maybe 6 months of expenses. I don't know, like every company's different, maybe 2 months of expenses, but companies should be deploying the cash to grow the business, whether it's to hire good employees, build factories. I don't know what the business does, of course. If it's a Tesla, then it's to build more factories or to spend in R&D to develop. Of course, companies should be paying dividends if that's their kind of like structure. But if they don't, in Costco's case, if they were making too much, then they could offer a special dividend. But Victor, do you have anything? I'm not exactly sure the direction of the question.
Yeah, I think so I would say that if you have businesses like Apple, Meta, Alphabet, Microsoft, if you look at their balance sheets, they have a war chest of cash and short-term investments. And I think those businesses are looking to continue to grow. So they want to have the resources to acquire. They want to have the resources to enter a market. They want to have the resources to compete and continue to get bigger. Now, there's a different type of company, right? I'm a value investor. So I have these investments in companies that have been around for a long time. And those companies, are like Chevron. They know what they are. They're an energy company. So they're not going to keep as much cash as, let's say, an Alphabet, because they're going to they do 2 things. They pay a dividend, but they also buy back shares. So you're right that, if a business has too much cash and they already have a mature business, meaning they're not going to expand much more, they can begin to return that capital back to the investor in the form of a dividend, which is taxable, or they can buy back shares, which is what Warren Buffett really likes, is you buy back shares and then the stock price increases because you took shares, out of circulation. So those are the 2 methods there.
Right. But cash, people like, and I it's hard for me to explain to people unless it's more live like this, but especially over chat, people have this sense like cash is so important and companies that have a ton of cash are better. But cash is kind of irrelevant. Of course, it's not like it's not like if your friend had $1 million in cash and you had 10,000 in cash in the bank, probably your friend is doing better. I don't know. You might own real estate, but I understand for individuals why you think cash is so important. But businesses, cash is really not that important. What's important is using the cash to give a 20, 30% return on the money. Who invests in a company so they can just put cash in the bank?
Right.
and earn 3%.
I mean, staying on the balance sheet, the one thing I would say is that, net debt is really important to track because, like, back to your analogy of friends, right? If one friend had no debt and another friend had $1 million of debt, who's in trouble? The friend that has $1 million of debt. So companies, especially as interest rates really went up.
If I have $1 million in debt, I might be doing much better than my friend with 100 in debt, because if I have $1 million in debt and I have 200 million of cash and 200 million of hard assets, I'm doing fine.
Yeah.
But if my friend has $100 of debt and he has no cash, no assets, I'm probably, so it's like the whole picture kind of thing.
Yeah. And I'm talking about net debt. So deduct the cash from the debt.
Net debt? Okay.
But as we look at the businesses that really got hurt in 22, especially actually 23, is as interest rates really rose, like AT&T is a good example, and communications companies carry a high amount of debt. They just, their debt cost is going to be expensive, and it continues to go up as interest rates go up. So net debt is one thing that is important to me as I look at a company, is because I don't want them to be a slave to their debt. If they start just functioning to pay off their debt, they're going to be really handcuffed, and they're going to be very susceptible. They're going to be very vulnerable.
Yeah, I mean, that's something to look at. If a company has a lot of debt, that's going, because if a company has, if you look at two companies, one has 10 million in debt, the other has 10 million in debt. But so you think they're equal, but one of the companies has 10 million of debt and it's all due in 2025. Like, they have to pay it back. And the other company, they have to pay it back in 2035. So then it's a different picture, right? The company has to pay it back next year, might go bankrupt, because if they don't have the ability to pay it off or refinance the debt. But it's tricky, because I try to look at that too, debt, and I'm like, if they have a lot of debt and it's due next year, but most of the time, like, you look at a company like Coca-Cola, and if they have a lot of debt due, it doesn't matter, because they generate like $10 million of revenue every day. Yeah, and it's really confusing, I know, when you try to look at the whole picture and try to put things together.
Yep.
Did I miss anybody's name up here? And you could thank Costco because of that special dividend. And hopefully, if I do these raffles, I'll get more people on the channel.
My family and I are probably a reason why you're getting that dividend. Every time we go to Costco, there's no way you can get out of there without spending at least $200.
Yeah, it's great. It's the best.
And you get a good deal on things, so you can't resist. You have to load up the cart, and $400 later, you're going home. It's
the best deal. Like, if I ever see something at Costco, I don't even look at other stores, because I know they're not going to be lower in price.
And the quality is always there. I mean,
and quality, yeah. It's They have the best business model because they buy in bulk. They have such enormous buying power, like Walmart. Like, the buying power, you can't compete. Like, if you're a mom and pop business, you just can't compete. You'll never get as much buying power. You can't buy from your vendors. If you're just a small store, you'll never get a good price from your vendors. So the only way to compete with Costco is to sell at a price lower than you buy it at. So you have to lose money on every sale just to compete with a Costco. So that's why they're just such a good business model.
So there was a question earlier on the chat of which sectors are benefiting from a dropping interest rate. Can we take that one up? Talk about that.
Yeah, dropping interest rate. Which Oh yeah, what do you think about that? That's a good question.
So a really good example is Enphase Energy. I think you've done a video on Enphase, right? And
yeah.
And they're booming. They've boomed for the last 30 days or so. Let me take a quick look, but that is a very interest rate sensitive business, because homeowners, right, when they want to put solar, and I put solar on my house, usually finance that purchase, and you finance it for a long term. So it really changes the value proposition to the customer. Like, hey, instead of you look at like the solar we installed, we're saving like $100 to $150 a month on our electricity, which is, hey, that's a good ROI. Sign me up. Now, if they would have told me, hey, you're going to be paying $300 more per month and you're going to have solar, I'd probably be like, no, that's a deal breaker. No, thank you. So Enphase and anything that requires heavy financing is going to benefit from lower interest rates. So if we look at car sales, if we look at those types of purchases, I think that there might be value there. Ford really rallied over the last couple of weeks, and that's where I'm really focusing some of my energy, is trying to see which sectors capital is going to rotate out of certain sectors and into the sectors that are going to benefit in 24. And one of the big factors is this lower interest rate. Which companies are going to win out of that big change.
Yeah, no, good point.
Yeah, Enphase is up. I got to double check this. It's up 64% since November 9th. Enphase Energy.
Yeah. These energy companies, that's another hot one. The every country's trying to move towards less dependence on oil and greener. So these companies, even though most of these companies, they're actually profitable in phase. Yeah, they're cash flow positive. I even forgot exactly what they do.
They're listed, believe it or not, they're listed as a semiconductor company, but I'm like, yeah, they don't look like a semiconductor company to me. And that's based on Fidelity's classification, so they may be wrong, but they create a lot of
solar and Yahoo Finance.
Okay, so yeah, so they create a lot of the products that basically go on your rooftop when they install your solar. So they do components that would resemble kind of like a high-tech item, because it is high-tech. And on paper, if you look at their growth, they look good. I do own shares, not a big position, because they've just been hammered over the last. If I look at the 6-month chart, they're down 28%, but over the last month and I guess 5 weeks, they're up 64%. So very volatile. And if they stabilize and continue to grow, they're going to do fine. They were a $300 stock January 23, and now they're trading for 123.
Yeah, they really took off in 2019. Like they were in 2012 they IPO'd, and then they didn't really move for 7 years. So could you imagine if I said put 10 grand into this company and then you're down 30% most of the time, and then after 7 years you're finally flat? Most people would probably sell because they were down like 50% at one point. And then it goes up like, what is it? 10 to 300, 30x. So you could, so 10,000. So you turn a 10,000 into like, 30, 10,000 times 30. Oh,
what is
it's
that?
300,000. So 10,000, 300,000 if you waited for the peak. But it's a long road to wait.
Yeah, it takes internal fortitude, right? You got to have conviction. And for example, I think my Coinbase investment is not on fundamentals. It's not. You can't. You look at Coinbase and it's like,
it's not that. I mean, if I was going to invest in crypto, I would be investing in Coinbase. I wouldn't buy Bitcoin or Dogecoin. If I was to suggest anyone, because this is a real company that is generating cash, they're generating profits. They're crypto. I mean, there's nothing wrong with investing in crypto, but there's nothing tangible. It's like investing in foreign currency. You can use the currency to buy things, but it doesn't grow. Doesn't like that $100 bill or 100 euros doesn't sprout into like 1,000 euros. But Coinbase is a real company that charges fees. They have like a stranglehold over the crypto market, right? I mean, they're number one by far, right?
Two big things happen that pretty much delivered a lot of value to them. Is one, FTX, right? It's very well known. FTX collapsed.
Yeah,
so
Sam.
All those account holders needed to go somewhere. Well, they went to Coinbase. Second is Binance, which is I think still the biggest crypto coin exchange in the world. They got in a lot of trouble. Their CEO had to resign. I believe he has to go to jail, and all that bad press is again driving customers from Binance to Coinbase. So they benefited from that. So they're the number one exchange. They're publicly traded. They're growing. ETFs are probably going to happen. I'm not sure, but it seems that's going to happen. So my whole thesis on Coinbase is really just thinking that this market, it's an alternative asset class. It's not for everybody. Only few people invest in crypto. I get that. But in that asset class, Coinbase is going to be the dominant player and nobody else is going to take it from them. And they're probably going to be acquired by a big financial services company like a JP Morgan or somebody who says, hey, that's a valuable market. Let's acquire Coinbase. They have a valuation of 35 billion and we can have, kind of a pretty good position in that alternative asset class. So that was my whole thought around Coinbase. And I checked the fundamentals, but if I relied on fundamentals, I would have not invested in Coinbase because they just didn't check out based on the way I would value Meta or Alphabet or another company.
Right. It's definitely more complicated when you look at like a company like this or a bank or an insurance company. It's not straightforward. Like when you look at a Kraft Heinz, it's very kind of obvious how they make money.
That's a mature industry, mature company. You can really understand it, but like biotech is an example. This company's working on a drug that's going to help a lot of people. And if they're successful, the company is going to be worth 50 billion. But if they fail, it's a complete loss. How do you invest in that? That's a little tougher and out of my league. Yeah. I don't tend to get in investments like that.
Yeah. You got to be, if you're really dialed into those things, it's like investing in commodities too. If you're really knowledgeable on like what's going on, you could probably make a lot of money, but it's those drug companies, they're just like, there are a dime a dozen in the biotech. There's like probably like a couple thousand trading, and 95% of them will never ever make something worthwhile. They won't ever get a patent. So you're just kind of banking on like them developing things. I mean, it's not a lotto ticket, but you're not too far off from gambling. Anyone else about Schwab buying TD Ameritrade? I know Morgan Stanley bought E-Trade because Morgan Stanley, Morgan Stanley bought E-Trade because I use E-Trade. You're saying Schwab, that cash-rich companies tend to have a premium. What is hard, because some companies have price to book below 1, like a lot of these shipping companies in the marine shipping industry, they have a price to book below 1. Because when you invest in like a company with like a lot of hard assets, like a mining company, they own a lot of like physical assets. So their balance sheet their assets are really heavily weighed, artificially higher because they have so many fixed assets. Or even like a Tesla, they have factories, so the balance sheet is very heavy. The assets are really heavy. That doesn't mean, and if you think, is Constantine still here? He's really good at this stuff. So yeah, price to book. It's come on, market cap over book value. I mean, or you can do the stock price over book value per share. So if a company has a market cap of 1 billion and book value, do you guys know in the comments what book value is? Like, how do you find book value or the equation? This is a good. I'm sure a bunch of you know but just in case, then let me know in the comments. Let's see who gets it first. What is book value? How do you find it? Or tell me the calculation. Somebody's got to get it. Come on, you guys, you watch my videos, right? It's fine if you don't know. Okay, it's just on a balance sheet. It's assets minus liabilities. Or the equity number on the balance sheet. Assets subtract liabilities, yeah. So book value, because the balance sheet is called the book. Like if someone says, oh, what's the book value of this building? What they mean is, what is the value according to the balance sheet? So if you bought the building for $100 million, right? $100 million, and you depreciated it $30 million over the past 5 years, the book value is $70 million. And book value has nothing to do with the value of the asset. They should be linked, but sometimes they're not. Sometimes they're different. Because if you bought the building for $100 million, you depreciated $30 million. The value on the balance sheet is $70 million. That doesn't mean you could only sell it for $70 million. Because if you did sell it for $80 million, you would just book a $10 million gain on your income statement. But if you sold it for $60 million, you'd have to pass through a $10 million loss onto your income statement. Those are called non-cash items, non-cash gains or losses. Are you with me, Victor, on that? Or
yeah.
Okay. I know I might say it quickly, so I wanted people to. So if a company has market cap, you guys, what's market cap? Do you guys know what market cap is? Like, I know you know what market cap is. You go to Yahoo Finance and look for the market cap. But what's the equation to calculate market cap?
The number of shares times the stock price.
Yeah. It's right here, 35 billion. You just do 148, and then you go They have 192 million shares outstanding. Let's see if it works. It might not be exact, but let's see. What did I say? 192 million? It should be close, but it might be a little off.
Yeah, it's off. Let me look at it. So you have
okay, this is why. Implied shares outstanding. See, it gets confusing because how would you know to look for implied shares outstanding? I mean, implied shares, this is the true shares outstanding. Sometimes the information they pull is a little stale, or to add more confusion to it,
there it is.
Probably 192 million are the shares in the market, and there might be another 40 million shares locked up somewhere from somebody who, when they started the company, so they don't even report it. I don't know, but it's 239 is the real number.
Hey,
what's that?
Can I suggest something? Can we get kind of like just on the chat, people's feelings on where's the S&P going to end up at the end of 2024? We're having a very good year. It's been an excellent year. Is it going to be a repeat? Do you think it's going to be zero? Are we going to lose? Is the S&P going to lose at the end of 2024? Any thoughts that you guys are willing to put out there on chat of where you think it's going to end at the end of 2024?
So you mean in 2 weeks? What it's going to be in 2 weeks?
No, end of 2024. So in a year and 2 weeks.
So 25. Wait.
So this is 20. We're at the end of 2023.
Right. Yeah.
So in 1 year, where is the stock market going to be? Is it going to be higher, about the same, or lower?
So it's 469. Everybody throw out a number and I'll take the average. It's 469 today. So in 54 weeks, what will it be? Do you think it'll be 490? You think it'll be 410? Throw out a number and I'll take the average of the group, see what the group thinks. $469. It's somebody was just telling me, a family member was just telling me that when their father died, they got like a $50,000. I don't think they told me the amount, but they said they got an inheritance. So I'm just gonna say it's 50 in 2007 or so, or maybe it was 2008. And then and they were like, and I lost about 40% in a year, and I sold everything.
Oh.
And they said, "Do you think it would have went up?" Well, I said, "This is what it looks like."
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know what they invested in, but this is the best guess I have.
There's been moments where I've observed. So I like the comments that are coming through. By the way, it's cool to see where people's heads are at with how the stock market's going to do next year. But let me comment really quick. So when COVID hit, the stock market crashed, and I did not sell one share. I wish I would have bought Zoom. I wish I would have bought like all these stocks that obviously just took off. And then the prior moment that I remember was 9/11. You remember 9/11, how they closed the stock exchange and then it opened and it crashed for 2 days? Yeah. I didn't sell one share. I didn't sell anything. And then the last one I'll comment is the big financial crisis of 2008, 2009. Ditto. Stock market just crashed. And people that sold just fell so far behind because the market recovered so fast that it would have been very difficult to get back in unless you had like, this is my 2-week plan. I'm going to get out and then get back in. If you were that smart, you should be a billionaire. So
or that lucky. Yeah. If you
so what you were just citing is something that, I've lived through 3 times, and I'm glad that I never sold one share.
I could prove this, but I sold. I even emailed friends showing them my E-Trade. I sold a lot of my. I sold like a lot of my stock, like probably 3/4 of my brokerage account on February 2020, and I paid down my house, paid off my house. And then it crashed, and I was emailing with screenshots because I was so proud of myself. I go, look what I did. I could have lost $100,000 if I didn't sell. And I didn't have any idea. I mean, I did. I mean, I was thinking for like at least a decade, ever since, because ever since just this point, because I started ever since 2008 during a recession. Probably like 3 years after that point, I was constantly thinking, when's the big crash? It was like, what was it? 12 years of a bull market. I go,
Yeah.
when's the crash? When's the crash? And I didn't really think it was going to crash.
And real estate during that time, oh my God, it just continued to go. Everything was, all assets were going up and going up.
But like, I'm the idiot because I could have not double my money. I could have got a 30% return if I didn't sell anything. And I was like, haha, I'm a genius. My one friend who's a financial advisor, he said, if you were a real genius, this is when the market crashed because I showed him my accounts. He said, if you're a real genius, you put it all back in right now. And I said, what are you, an idiot? I didn't say that, but I was thinking that, like, who you tell me what to do? But he was exactly right. If I did put it in, I would have killed it. But I did pay off my house. So it's not like it's not like I sold it and like, went on vacation or something. So, but I should have just, but that's the thing. You don't know. You can't time this stuff.
Yeah. On that comment, right, is, if you hang on to a position and then it goes down, but your gut was telling you that, you've met the objective, right? Like TSM, I exceeded the objective and I sold the position and I got out, and it continued to rise and then it crashed. Now, I didn't think it was going to crash. I thought it was just going to go up modestly from that point. And I wanted to take the money and pretty much book the gain. And same thing with, Broadcom and so forth. And you got it in my book. I have to do that because I'm a value investor when I buy, I'm a value investor when I hold, and I'm a value investor when I sell. You can't be just one. You just accumulate stocks and then whatever they do, whatever, you don't really care. Well, that's not that's not how I manage my portfolio. If a stock either falls on bad times, makes bad decisions, the company's making bad decisions, management is running the company into the ground, I got to get out, and the valuation is going to change based on the fundamentals of the company. Or if the stock price just rises really fast and exceeds the value that I think the company is worth, it's time to exit the position. So that's one thing that I've followed. And the stories that, I think, if anything, I find them confusing is, some books and some theories are about buying a stock, holding it forever, and multiplying your money times 50. We'd all like to do that, but it's super difficult to do that. Instead, I'd rather, hey, I want to make 20%, 25% return on my money. If I do that, I'm very happy.
Right.
In 22, I did not lose as much as the S&P lost. I consider that a win. This year, my growth portfolio is exceeding the S&P. I'm happy with that. I don't have to be mad at myself for not buying all magnificent 7 stocks.
Right.
I had 3 out of 7. And I'm glad I had the 3. But I would say that's something that for me, that I've found a comfort zone of how I'm going
Yeah.
to manage my portfolio, and each investor should find that comfort zone of how you're going to buy, hold, and sell.
Like, you're never going to be truly happy. You're always going to look at, oh, I could have did this, I could have did that. Because even if you turn 10,000 to 1,000,000, you'd be pissed off if at one point the $10,000 grew to 50 million, and then you sold at 1,000,000. Like, I mean, so it's just so hard to hindsight it'll drive you nuts. But it's good to understand these things, because when you look at it in a big picture, like, because you always look back, oh, if I could have just put like 10 grand into this stock or this or this. But somebody has an interesting question, JB Weld. He said, do you pay attention to the rising, falling dollar versus other currencies? It's a good thought, and I don't really pay too much attention. I could see some value there, because if a country's currency gets crushed, you probably wouldn't be investing in these countries. Like, you're probably not investing in Venezuelan or South African companies. Like, they're like, inflation is through the roof, or Argentinian companies. And theoretically, I guess it's possible you're investing in Mexican companies, or possibly Brazilian companies. But generally, foreign currency, hopefully the companies you're investing in, they're prepared. They have hedging contracts to offset those big swings. But I mean, I don't really follow that too much for trading purposes. Do you follow like currency changes?
I don't. It's so the way that I invest is I have a process, and it has a certain number of fundamentals. I could bring in more data, but that'll just confuse me. It'll make it much harder. And if a company is sound, like I own a couple mining companies, one of them is Teixeira, and they have operations in Mexico, Argentina, and the other one is BHP. They both have been doing well this year, and they pay a big dividend. And I don't look at the currency at all. I do look at the commodity prices, because those are really important. Like copper really affects BHP, iron ore, and then steel prices for Teixeira and so forth. But I don't really pay attention to the currencies, because and I could be wrong. It's just too much data to bring into my process, and it shouldn't affect the valuation a whole lot. If, let's say, the dollar gains or loses 5 to 10% against another currency, it is going to be an impact, but it's not like a huge impact. Like, oh no, the dollar is now worth twice as much as the Mexican peso. Okay, that hasn't happened in a long time, and it happens over a long period of time. But if you move just a couple percentage points, it doesn't make a big difference to me.
I think it's more important to look at the country, the political climate as a whole, than the currency, because most people don't do foreign currency trading. Some people do, but it's a bit difficult to. Here's something Mike said that I see that people make this mistake a lot. It does appear that Amazon traded at 10 cents or 7 cents, but they've never traded that. They've never traded below like probably $20 ever. I mean, they IPO'd for like probably $16, but when you build in the 2-for-1, the 3-for-1, the 2-for-1, and these are multiplied together, 20-for-1, it appears they've actually hit that level. Like, because it says 8.5 cents. So I'll tell you how much it really traded for at 97. 2, 3, to 20. 2, 3, 2, 20. So you take the product of all the splits. So it would trade at, it IPO'd around $20. But that's how you readjust for splits. It was actually $20, but the splits, every time they did a split, like for instance, in 1998, like in June 3rd, 1998, this chart would have said $10 at IPO because it would have cut everything in half by 2. And then if you looked at this chart on January 6, 1999, it would have said $3.33 they traded for because all previous ones are divided by 3. That's just to smooth out the line so it doesn't look like it doesn't make sense. But it's fine. Like we all make that mistake. I used to make that mistake too. I just hate when people, what was the company? I can't remember what it was. I don't think it was UCO, but this person, I know it'll make sense on this chart. This person was like, I'm loading up on UCO. I forgot what it was, what company, but it was a company that did a lot of reverse stock splits. But UCO is a good example. They got, I'm loading up on UCO because it's trading at $27. And at one point it was 53 last year. And if I go back further, it was 150.
Oh, man.
And if I go back even further, it was 5,000. $5,000 a share, and now it's only 20. So even if it gets to 1,000, I'm gonna be a millionaire. And then I say to the person, it's never ever traded at 5,000, and never even at 100. It appears that way because reverse stock splits have the opposite effect.
Mm-hmm.
If you take the product of, they actually did a regular stock split here, a 4-for-1. That's just to show you, this would have been 20,000 if it didn't do that regular. You take the product of the splits. But I learned this stuff the hard way too. I ended up investing in a company. I'm like, how come it keeps going down a stock? Why does it seem like it was so expensive? Then I realized how stock splits work. But okay. That's my tangent on stock splits.
Good example.
Yeah. What's that?
So,
Rig.
Where did we end up with the expectations for the stock market, if it's going to go up or down?
Actually, it's pretty much flat based on everybody's.
So there's a kind of a expectation that a repeat
470 is the average, and it's 469 right now.
Okay, yeah. I agree with that, by the way.
And a 540.
I came to this live stream ready to cite that I expect the S&P is going to be 0 to 5% is going to be the gain at the end in a year and 2 weeks. That's my best guess. Is it's going to be hard to repeat, mainly because the Magnificent Seven are just so valuable. They're like 30% of the S&P. So if they sneeze, the S&P catches a cold. It's just going to be hard for the S&P to move. I think small and mid cap stocks are going to do well in 24, but they're not included in the S&P. But we'll see.
Right. I think it's going to be a bullish year, and the reason is because of inflation. I think inflation, although it cooled down a lot, it really pushed prices higher. I don't know if anybody's remembered like what it was in like the 90s or early 2000s when you bought things like gas or you bought food. Everything is just so expensive. And if you want to protect yourself against inflation, just don't keep money in the bank, because That's what inflation is. It's a tax on your savings. It makes your savings worthless if you leave it there long enough. So you have to get it out of the bank and put it into something like a real estate or stocks. So I think stocks will go up a lot to just keep pace with how much things have gone up. But it has cooled down a lot, inflation. It was like almost 10%, right? At one point last year.
9%. Yeah. Yeah.
Which is just crazy.
Yeah, it was nuts, but it was real. Used car prices were just nuts. Like some used cars were being priced above what the price was when the person bought it a year or two prior. It was pretty nuts for about 1 year.
Yeah, I paid $20,000 for my used Camry, which is more than I paid for my BMW in 2000 when I bought it. Although I did buy a used BMW too, but it was only 2 years old. But yeah, that's the way to, and inflation makes debt. It cleans your debt up. It's like you have no debt.
Right.
Like,
so one of the things that I did, so with real estate, it's in a way, to me, it's a little easier to pick bottoms and kind of, feel your way through, when troughs are happening. 2010, I bought multiple properties thinking, man, they're discounted. Nobody's buying. Okay, great. And I bought them and I did really well with the properties I bought in 10, 11. What I did more recently is I financed in 2021 and I got a rate of 2.5%. This is before the whole inflation rise. And I took all that money and put it into bonds and I earned about 5 to 6%. So on all that money, the arbitrage is I pay somebody 2.5% and I earn 5 to 6% elsewhere.
Wow. See, you're smart. You're a lot smarter than me. I had a mortgage for 3% on my house, and I paid down the house. And everybody's saying to me, "Why would you pay down your house? You could have gotten a better return." How when it was 3%, of course now, yeah. How was I supposed to know inflation was going to hit 9%? When I paid off my house, it was a decade of low interest rates. Why was it going to wait?
Well, back in, you remember in the 90s, you remember Bill Gross, the bond king?
Yeah.
Way back when, what was his fund called? It was called the Total Return Fund. And I was an investor in the Total Return Fund. And, I went to college, got my MBA, and the theory of, the 40-60, if anything, just a balancing between stocks and bonds. So I knew enough about bonds to look at it historically and see that, hey, historically bonds should be paying a lot more than zero. and that's why, that's what was kind of like the idea is, okay, well, what's the worst that can happen is I take that money, I'm paying 2.5%. It's like ridiculously low. And yeah, I can invest it in stocks purely, but if I lose my shirt on stocks, then I'd be kind of regretting it. And then bond prices started to have, or I should say bonds began to have a better yield. And it ended up working out really well, especially the I bonds. For a while, they were paying like 10%. It was great.
Oh yeah, the I bonds. Wait, Mike is saying Apple was OTC. Apple, no, I don't think that's what. Why do you think Apple was OTC?
Well, they were bankrupt in 90. Was it 95, 96? They were bankrupt, and of all companies, Microsoft bailed them out. Maybe they were put on the over-the-counter for a short period of time.
It was under $8. That was the lowest. No, it wasn't OTC. Mike, it's the same thing I said about about Amazon. It's like it's the same. Like the only reason Berkshire Hathaway stock is 550,000 because they didn't split. If Apple wanted to, they could be higher than $600,000 a share. They just because Apple's a much bigger company. It's 5 times bigger than Berkshire. It's just most companies split their stock so people can afford it. So yeah, so of course it appears because if you bought it for say $35 a share, I don't know what it probably wasn't 30, probably was like 15 or 20 when it IPO'd. If you bought one share, you probably have like 500 shares today. So it would appear. Search 12 most successful teachers. And I wouldn't even trust these articles because some of these articles are trying to like I don't know, like such extreme like ideas to get viewers, but I don't. Rewind to early 2000, Apple was trading at less than $1 per share. It's just like they don't know. I mean, I don't know who wrote this, but they don't know about stock splits. I don't think. If you said in the 80s, I would maybe think, okay, maybe. Apple was not a OTC. Yeah. Right, Victor? Like that's.
Yep. And I misspoke. In 97, Apple almost went bankrupt, but Microsoft came in with 150 million and bailed them out, but they never filed for bankruptcy.
Yeah, a lot of companies almost went bankrupt or even went bankrupt, but Chapter 11 is kind of like is.
Hey Scott, I'm not sure if it's me, but I think we're having bandwidth issues.
Oh, you hear me now, right?
I can hear you now, but I think for about 5 to 8 seconds, I couldn't hear anything you were saying.
Warren Buffett bought in at $35 a share. Okay, it's fixed. No, this was a good stream. We covered a lot, and we've been consistently at 20 viewers, so it's been a pretty good audience. It would be cool to get like 100 people, but one day, I guess.
This was a lot of fun. I really appreciate you having me, and thank you so much for all the analysis and for all the lessons that I've benefited from in watching your videos.
Oh, definitely. Yeah, no problem. And make sure you sub to Victor's channel. Everybody.
I appreciate that. But if you guys see value in my channel, awesome. And I'd appreciate it. And if you have any questions beyond that, feel free to hit me up on either my channel or my email's on the channel. I'd be happy to help you guys if I can.
Yeah, I mean, Victor has a lot of experience. He's been trading probably longer than me. So even if you only get one bit of knowledge from someone, it's valuable. But I have a feeling it's going to be a lot more than one bit. And is Constantine still here? He's probably left already. He lives in the Netherlands. But if anybody, he's really smart. He's probably smarter than me. He knows a lot.
Yeah, I follow him. He's super bright.
Yeah, he knows it. He understands it really well. So sub to him. And yeah, I'm gonna try to do more videos. I'm finishing up my Pfizer video right now. It's taking a long time, but
Awesome.
okay. So I guess we'll log off now. Okay, thanks a lot, Victor. Thanks everybody.
Thanks, Scott. See you guys.
Okay, see you.